It always comes to this. Hello there guys, back again to do another tattoo progress update. Where I last left off, Rick and I had done this section of my arm in here. It's mostly peeled. There's some light scabby stuff that's going to fall off. Should be next time I take a shower most likely. I never worry about any of that. It's not super deep, so most of the color did pretty good. Some of the light blue didn't do as well as some of the stuff we have in other places, but that's okay. The light blue, Rick's going to do a touch-up on anyway, all at the end, because he figures 2 passes for all the light blue would be for the best anyway. You can see where the red velvet is right now. That's kind of what it's going to look like on 1 pass when it heals. And then I have some 2 pass here, which looks more like this stuff does when it's first healed. So, and again, obviously 3 passes would be more like that. So yeah, pretty okay with how everything healed up with Rick. In my last video, I had talked about doing the 3rd pass of the red on my shoulder and doing some final touch-ups and highlights on my my head tattoo before I grow it in, just kind of wherever it needs to be. That didn't end up happening. I put a little note in that video talking about it. Plans had changed. I was just looking at my back. I wasn't happy with the saturation of it quite yet. And it's an easy guess why it was the way it was. It was, you could see some of the mag stripping, especially through the shoulder blades and upper back. And I just wanted to smooth all that out. It's now been 4 weeks to the day since I did the first pass of the back blackout, the entire back. So technically, you don't really need more than 3 weeks. I've actually touched things up in less than 3 weeks before. But you need to be really well healed in order to do that. I wouldn't have recommended doing anything like that on my back, especially because we covered so much ground in such a short span of time. It was really, it was probably a lot of damage overall to not just the skin, but also the musculature and my overall core doing that much all at once. So definitely not a wise idea to get back into that in even 3 weeks. I think 4 weeks was probably the earliest we should do something so large scale again. With that said, I'll turn around and show it off, but obviously I can't show off much of the back on camera, but even the fresh of it looks way more smooth and solid than it did last time. It certainly wasn't a lack of darkness last time. It was pitch black as it was. It wasn't about making it any darker. It was about smoothing it out. And for that reason, I almost always recommend a second pass with black work. In general, with anything color related, I'm one to recommend second passes, and I've gone on about that. But because with black work, everything is one solid mass, if there are any discrepancies in the work, they're going to show like a sore thumb. It's just the nature of the beast. I actually had a guy message me just yesterday asking me if, because so much of social media shows these one pass blackouts fresh, and then you never really see them healed, and some of the big guys do it and some of the small guys do it. It's just a problem with social media in general. He was thinking that because his arm wasn't perfect on one pass, he needed to find a new artist. Luckily, I talked him out of that, and I explained to him after what he showed me, and his arm was fairly solid for one pass, that it's really just a case of needing a full second pass. Now, you can't touch up a blackout like you can most tattoos, and this is where some people will go wrong. You'll be able to see all the inconsistencies between what you touched up versus what you didn't. So, for example, anything that you hit twice is going to be a little bit darker initially. Now, whether it eventually goes to the same tone of black or the same shade of black or not, it doesn't really matter. The fact of the matter is, as those levels of black settle, they're going to look different. They're going to look like they were done at different times, or even they can even look like they were done by a different artist, or a different black ink was used, or different technique, or whatever. It's just not going to look quite the same. So for touching up black work, you have to more or less cover the whole area, or at least most of the area. There was, for example, a time when I had these skull door knockers on my chest around my nipples, and we left them. Lee and I left them when we blacked out most of my torso. I had Rick come in and black those guys out, and then because we didn't black out everything around them, what ended up happening was you could see almost the outline and shape of those guys around my nipples until we came back in and smoothed the whole area. Likewise, Rick did some small touch-ups on my arm where you could see some spottiness, and because of that, I had dark black around semi-medium tone black that was chilled out for a couple years, and it drove me nuts for a while, and that was a one-off. I never did it that way again. When we came back to smooth that out, we did a whole pass of the arm again. It's impossible to say for me how many times my arms were blacked out. I get so many people ask me like if they were done in 1 or 2 sessions, and that's just silly. Not even Hood or say Walker will promise a one-shot blackout to be perfect. And you have to remember always, every single artist that posts on Instagram doesn't post their best or their worst work. They only post things they like the most or their best work. So that means that for every one post you see, and for someone like a Hood, and this is not a knock on Hood, Hood's a great guy, I've chatted with him quite a bit, and his work is super solid, but he only posts, maybe once a week, maybe even less. Maybe he posts to his story a little more often, but he's not posting every blackout sleeve he does. He's just posting the ones that he likes the most. That's not to say that they're not mostly all pretty close to perfect. It just means that sometimes you're covering things that are harder to cover than others. There's all kinds of things that can go into that. He actually put up a fact on his page at some point. I think it might be in his highlights on his Instagram, where it speaks about whether you're a good candidate for blackout one shot or not. And there's all kinds of things that go into that, not the least of which, if you have a full color sleeve, you might not be the best candidate for such a thing. If you have a black and gray sleeve with very little scarring, then it'll go a lot easier. Part of what made my back blackout achievable in 1 session, or 2 now, but the first session we got full black coverage. That's not deniable. It was black. It was just a little patchy. But the only reason we were able to do that was because it was mostly black and gray shading. Now, there was some highlights in there. There's a lot of white, but, it was mostly black and gray shading. So when you're covering black and gray with more black, it's easy. When you're covering yellow or red or green or blue, those colors can come through a lot more. So, for example, there were some spots on my spawn sleeve, my left arm, that were incredibly saturated with green and light yellow ink. And those things stuck through like a motherfucker. No matter how many times we covered it, it seemed like a little bit of that yellow would bleed through. And then there's also just the case of sometimes the scar formation will always show through the black too. There's still some spots on both of my arms that you can see. If you know where to look, you can see the scar. In here, you can see scar formation still from a little guy I had on my shoulder. So those things can't be hammered out no matter how much black ink you use. And that guy was blacked out probably 6 or 7 times, just trying to get rid of it. Same thing, I had a halo of an existing tattoo on my throat that it would not go away. Even when we blacked it out 3 times, it was still there. And now you can't see it because there's something obscuring it. Anyway, I will say we used the 123 The thing handled like crazy. That thing was, it was hard for Terry to run. He wasn't sure what voltage to have his machine at. So the whole thing was a learning experience. Terry went out and bought plastic cups to dip his machine in because there's no conventional ink cap that's big enough for that. It's like dipping a fucking golf ball in a tiny cup or something. It was outrageous looking. And not to say the least, his station was a complete bloodbath. I was wearing a pair of regular blue jeans that I don't care too much about, and I did so on purpose because, pretty well 20 minutes into the session, my pants, my stomach, my chest, my arms were covered in black ink. That thing made a mess. With that said, Terry spent most of the time working with it sideways, kind of working left to right instead of up and down, because to get that many needles in something, you need almost no curvature. And even then, he had a little bit of drag on one side or the other. It's something that he's going to need to work more with. He has a few more of them. But he did figure it out well enough to do most of my back with it the second time. I don't think it would have been a great thing to be building the first pass with. I think it would have been a terrible thing to try and do the back with the first time. But coming in and smoothing out those mag lines and just kind of densing up the black, it did a really good job of it. It was a really good tool for that job. But when we got into the lower back, and then when we proceeded to cover my ass, which my back was built with the ass involved in it, and you'll see that in the videos I'm putting in here now. The first session was nearly 6-hour session, nearly 5-hour session, and there was a lot of blood loss and a lot of trauma from packing so much black in such a short amount of time. We left the lower back for the second session. That was done on by design. Not lower back, but the bottom, like the actual ass cheeks and ass crack that was done with the back piece. We decided to leave that for a second pass. That wasn't a tap out. That was done by design. Anyone who knows me will know that I've never tapped out, and I don't think that such a point exists for me. For anyone out there wondering if I use numbing cream for any of this, no. I took it raw. I don't know that there's anything that I need numbing cream for or that would be particularly helpful for me at this point in the game. And this is not a knock on anyone out there that does use numbing cream, but I don't feel the need for it. With that said, it definitely was more painful the second time, but there's no option for me to surrender. And since I don't really want to be pissing around with Blackout for that long at this stage in my life, for as many people as think that I keep blacking things out, there are people out there that think that I'm getting a piece, blacking it out, getting a new piece, blacking it out. None of that is happening. None of that is happening. I've never blacked anything out more than once. If I do black out, say, my chest and do another piece, that will be the first time. I guess you could say I've done something similar to that now with the eye rework that is still in some stage of healing, by the way, and parts of it are lightening up and getting more colorful as time goes on, not the other way around. You could say that I did something like that with that piece, where I had a keyhole there, then we blacked it out, then I put a grid pattern there, then we colored that in with white, black, and colors on the white, and then I blacked that out, and I may do some stars and stuff like that in the center there eventually now. I don't know if the center's going to stay fully black or if it's just going to be the center's fully black and the sides get some more details. I'm not quite sure what that looks like yet. We'll figure that out soon. Anyway, I'm not going to get off on that tangent. That would be the only place that I've done anything similar to what some people are describing. Nothing on me has been blacked out more than once, and these days I just use the blackout as a tool to facilitate other things. So, for example, obviously I'm going to be doing another back piece over the black. Still not going to get into that because it's far too soon to. But having done the second pass now, like I said, it was more painful than the first time, and the lower back / butt area was particularly horrible. Blacking out in and around your ass crack is never a good time. Any solid black in there is never pleasant. just get that off the table. And but it doesn't matter to me. Like if you want something bad enough, you just do it. There's no option of not doing it, because like what's it say? What do I think's gonna happen if I do half of my back in one session, then you come back and you do the half another session? It's not like it's not gonna hurt the same amount. So for me, it's like if I put this off and I do it next time, the pain is no less next time than it is this time. And at least doing it this way, you've got quite a bit of adrenaline. Going in cold to the lower back is never pleasant, and for those of you who have been watching my channel for a long time, you'll know the lower back is one of my top 5 worst spots to get tattooed. I don't know if it's because I have a really nervy lower back and I feel a lot of pain in there, but it's next level pain for me. It's far worse than the nipples or the belly button or the armpits or any of the other obvious contenders for that. So going in like straight into the lower back, I think it's worse than building down and you have that adrenaline and you're already in the process. I always say that the worst 5 minutes of a tattoo session are the first 5 minutes. So if you've already been getting tattooed for a few hours, when you're starting to approach the worst spot, then you've got a better foundation to work from there. And I feel like it hurts less when you're already in the mud when you get there, kind of thing. With that said, the 123 mag felt hotter and less pointed than a standard size mag, and when Terry switched back to the 49 mag, it felt way pinchier. It felt like he was using a 7 mag, but as I always say, comparison is a hell of a drug. So having the difference of something like 100 and plus needles in you and then going to 49 needles, it feels a lot smaller, and it feels like it covers ground a lot slower, even though it's still a fairly big needle grouping and bigger than most people will ever use. Terry was able to use that thing like it was very agile and lightweight. And the more he uses the 49, the more he's liking it and figuring out how to use it in smaller nooks and crannies as well. I find tattooers get really used to certain mag groupings and then they don't want to use anything else. Rick is very faithful to his 7 mags. Lee, my old tattoo artist and owner of the Rocky Mountain Tattoo chain, he's very proficient and very fond of 27 mags. And if what he needs to do takes another mag grouping, he almost doesn't want to do it now. So he'll try and find creative ways to use that 27 mag for just about every job. And he usually gets it done. So there's almost nothing he can't do without that thing now. But I understand it, you like your tools. When you get used to them, you don't want to switch. You get fond of what you like and you learn the nuances of the tools you've got, and, you get really good with them. So, yeah, this session was faster. I should say it was only 3.5, maybe close to 4 hours this time, which I figured would happen, even though we covered more ground. And it would have been that way even if Terry hadn't used the 123, even if he just used the 49, we still would have made good time. Because whenever you're doing a second pass, it's always faster than the first pass. And so, again, I make the argument here to end this off. If you're on the fence about touching up your Blackout, or if you think there most likely is, some spots that you should do a second pass, just go for it. It's going to be much less traumatic. You're going to swell less. It's going to cost less. You're going to feel less pain. It's going to heal easier. All of these things. Definitely do a second pass. With that said, I'll try and show this off one more time. I'll lower the camera. See if this does it. Hopefully that's doing the trick. I won't know till I watch this back because I can't really look over my shoulder. It's a little dry now, keep in mind, as this is the end of the day. And I also am not really banking on this being 100% perfect either. I wanted it to be smooth enough that I could be happy with it and then leave it to settle and chill out before sometime next year starting the new back piece most likely. And I'm still not entirely sure which artist I'm going to for it. Rick had a mind to collaborate with Terry on it, but I don't think that idea makes a lot of sense to me yet. And as I say quite often, if I can't get my mind around how it comes together, then I won't do it. It's the same reason why I haven't tattooed my palms more yet, and it's the same reason why I haven't tattooed my ears yet, because if I can't wrap my mind around what that looks like or how we're going to do it, then I'm not doing it yet. And I do consider myself the foreman of these projects, not necessarily the hands-on. I'm not the tattoo machine, I'm not the artist, but I am the guy who's coming up with a lot of what we're doing and kind of laying out the plans for it. So if I can't get the plans right in my head, then I'm not getting a guy on the job. So anyway, had a lot of fun. This Blackout project is pretty well at a close now. I don't think I'll be revisiting the Blackout. I think it was fun to do it in 2 big sessions. 2 very painful sessions that were kind of nostalgic for me and kind of reminded me of the Blackout journey. But I wanted to get it done quick and out of the way because I have no real use for Blackout in my life necessarily anymore. I find it beats me up quite a bit, and I've done enough of it that I've earned the right to be tired of it and just do more conventional tattooing methods and healing and in these smaller chunks and, you know, little fine detail work is just in a way more pleasant to live with. I'll talk to you guys again soon. Have a great day.